Hey there, data detectives, it's Raffaele here, and I am your guide through the statistical wilderness that the world will offer you. And you are tuned into UNYP Education. Today, we will be blending variables like a statistical smoothie with Mixed ANOVA, hopefully a prosaic one. You know, it's like getting the best of both worlds. Quite the Hannah Montana of statistics, if you may. Well, that's if you know who Hannah Montana is, of course. Before we dive into this mixed bag, let's do a quick refresher. ANOVA, or analysis of variance, is always our trusted method for comparing means across different groups. How many groups we need? Yes, you know it correctly. 3 or more, because if we have 2, then it will be t-tests. But wait here, there is a twist. Unlike two-way ANOVA, which compares groups with all unrelated independent variables, Mixed ANOVA picks a combo meal. It compares groups using both related and unrelated independent variables. In simple terms, it's like having siblings and friends over for dinner. Siblings being your related variables and friends being the unrelated ones. Or, if you prefer, if you don't like your siblings, you can switch it up, It can be a brother from another mother or a sister from another mister, as they like to say. Well, let's talk, assumptions as usual. I know you probably are tired of hearing my assumptions, but we must have some order in this very unruly world. Just like we discussed in our previous heart-to-hearts, normality is that old friend we are always checking in on. However, Mixed ANOVA is robust, as majority of the ANOVAs, so if normality isn't perfectly met, we don't panic, we just make a note of it. This is like if your friend will not come over, he's always there, so whatever. But what about homocelasticity, or the Levin's test of homocelasticity? Well, it's like expecting the same level of noise at our dinner party. If it's louder at one end, things can get skewed. If violated, meaning that if it's less than 0.25, we do not invite Levin next time, or we accept a lower p-value for significance. You know this. And then there is our sphericity. Maybe you might have forgot about this, we discussed it in the video on within subjects ANOVA. And specifically, sphericity will be for our related independent variable, or our within subject factor, and the interaction between the related factor and the unrelated factor. Think of it as everyone at the party is getting equal pie slices. If that's off, well, greenhouse geyser is our go-to correction. Again, should be less than 0.25. But again, you can find all this information in the video about unrelated ANOVA. So, effect sizes, well, as usual, eta squared tells us how much of the variance in our dependent variable is explained by our independent variables. It's like the life of our statistical party. And post hoc tests, well, Bonferroni is the bouncer, keeping our type 1 errors in checking by adjusting the significance levels. Why does it work? Well, because he's probably from some Italian mafia. I'm Italian myself, I would know. But no, jokes aside, because Bonferroni is cautious, ensuring that any significant results are truly deserving of attention. Main effects are like the individual dish reviews, while interaction effects are when the combination of dishes creates a new flavor. Or, a cocktail, if you prefer to drink. For a deeper dive, check again our two-way ANOVA video. It's the last one. Let's bring this home, where you all know how it works. Imagine we have 3 groups of patients, meaning our between subjects variable. We have patients which are taking our drug of interest, another drug, or placebo. We check their depression scores before giving them the drug and after giving them the drug. Mixed ANOVA helps us slice and dice the data to see not just how each group fares, but how they change over time. As I said, we're getting the best of both worlds. And that's not depression and drugs, but that's related groups and unrelated groups. That's my opinion at least. And now it's showtime. So, here in Jamovi, we will go through step by step as usual and just follow and bear with me. We will unravel the mysteries of this, well, quite complicated at first test. Alright, so as you can see, we have two IVs and, well, the DV is not precisely in here. The DV will be the depression scores. However, the other IV will be before and after. And the unrelated IV will be the between subjects, so between drugs, so drugs of interest, other drug, and placebo. So we go into ANOVA, of course, and where would you go? The answer here is repeated measures ANOVA. I know that we use repeated measures ANOVA for within subjects ANOVA. However, what's pretty about this log here is that it gives us the repeated measure cells, but also between subjects factor. So we have all that we need. So we will have depression before and depression after as our repeated measure cells. We can call these depression to before and after. So we have, like, you know, as you can see, like a prettier table. And we also add the between subjects factor, meaning our cohort of patients. Then we pick the eta square, which is going to be our effect size, and we will return on this later. Let's go on the assumption checks. We click on sphericity, we clicked on homogeneity. And here we have 1. Why do you think we have 1? Well, I mean, it's written right here. The reasons for this is that the test of sphericity will have to be carried only when we have more than 2 levels. Otherwise, it's always met. So in this case, we have before and after. We do not have a midpoint. If we would have had to have a midpoint, then sphericity would have made sense. In this case, it doesn't make sense in as much as it's only 2 levels. Anyway, homogeneity, we have that our data set is homogeneous before the drug and skewed after. However, since Mixed ANOVA is quite robust, we will just report it. So don't worry about it. You will just say that the assumption of homostaticity was respected for depression before and was violated for depression after. Now let's dive into these beautiful tables. What do they mean? Well, we have a between subjects factor. Let's start from, like, you know, from the bottom, and then we go to the top. That's what Drake, I believe, said. I don't know, I'm not a rap enthusiast. So the between subjects factor, meaning is there any significant difference between our patients on our depression scores? And the answer is yes, because we have a p which is less than 0.25, in this case less than 0.001. Our eta square is 213, meaning that 21% is accounted by our independent variable, meaning our group. So for this particular test, does not really mean much because we don't really care about this, but for other type of studies, the between subjects factor will be very important, maybe, especially because you might have different hypotheses which you can test. You can have an hypothesis looking at the between subject factor, an hypothesis looking at the within subject factor, and an hypothesis looking at the interaction effect. You can have the best of 3 worlds here. Well, that's, you know, Anna Montana with DID, or on steroids. Anyway, after all, we look at the within subjects effect. So we have this table, and we have 2 main outputs here. We have depression times cohort. Depression times cohort, as you can imagine, is our interaction effect, whereas depression is our within subjects effect. In this case, well, it's again significant, meaning that there is a significant difference between depression before and depression after. And the interaction effect, once again, significant, meaning that there is a significant interaction between the cohort of our patients and the drugs we give them on their depression before and after. Let's dive into a bit more detailed data. We go into post hoc tests. We do all 3. And in this case, no Tukey, no James Howell, no Chef, no Home, Bonferroni is your go-to. bouncer. He gives away the type 1 error, 100% guaranteed, or 95% guaranteed. So you can see that the difference is 18.5, which, if you remember, it means that the depression was higher after, which doesn't make sense, but again, this is just a sample data. Remember that if you have a hard time understanding these tables, I myself, as you saw, I have a hard time, you just go into the means and you have all of it in more understandable terms. Oh, not the plots, the tables, that's more understandable, 100%. So before it was 41, the mean depression, and after is 60. So, well, all drugs kind of made you depressed. Well, beautiful. So after this, we have the between subjects post hoc, where you have the individual differences between each level. So drug of interest, another drug, significant. Drug of interest and placebo, significant, and the other is also significant. Again, so if you would have had an hypothesis that would ask you, will there be a significant difference between other drug and drug of interest? And it would be absolutely confirmed, in as much as our friend Bonferroni here is significant. And then we have our interaction effect. As in two-way ANOVA, we already saw this. In this case, however, it's adding the within subjects factor. You have drug of interest before and other drug before, which is gonna be not significant. Beautiful. And then we have, for instance, here placebo, which is before, you have it here, and after drug of interest, and that's not significant again. But as you can see, we have a bunch of significances over here, so it really depends on your hypothesis and what you're trying to look for. Most of the time, if you're testing a drug, you will look at drug of interest before, drug of interest after, other drug and placebo. You will not care about the interaction between placebo and other drug. Maybe you will report just for, like, which word counts that you need to publish your research or your paper or your thesis or whatever. But at the same time, you don't have to really if you're not interested in that, in your hypothesis. And then here you have the means, as I mentioned, and that's about it. Mixed ANOVA seems very complicated, but in reality, it's just a two-way ANOVA where you add a within subject factor. So it gives you the best of both worlds without being that complicated. Trust me. Mostly, it's a mental break that we see, like, more IVs and we think it's harder. But in the end of the day, it's actually just as simple as any other ANOVA. Well, that's if you did not have complications for the previous ANOVA, of course. And if you did, well, we have them in this channel, so please check them out. And that, my friend, is a wrap on our Mixed ANOVA mashup. Whether you're analyzing drug efficacy or any other psych phenomena, remember, assumptions guide the way, effect sizes show the impact, and post hocs protect the integrity of your findings. Kind of like a pastor. Always keep the statistical tools polished and your psychological insights sharp. If you enjoy the statistical feast, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more delicious brain bites. Well, it was Halloween yesterday, forgive me please. Raffaele out, but not gone. Keep exploring, keep analyzing, and turn data into stories that change the world. See you next time!